Dejatarane. Sri Krishna, Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadha, Shrivas, Adi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So devotees, we're still in San Francisco. We are still in San Francisco. And there was just a whole quite lengthy description of Upendra and his relationship with Srila Prabhupada. And he concluded that he, Upendra, he felt that since it was not possible for him to see Govinda the way Swamiji saw him, he would serve Swamiji, the pure devotee of Govinda, and in that way become pure. I just want to become Swamiji's dog, Upendra said, as he left the apartment. Okay, so we're continuing on. In New York, the boys had their orders from Prabhupada not to give any more money to Mr. Price. Well, if you've been following it, you would know who Mr. Price, who and what Mr. Price is. He's a real estate agent, and he's a, what would you say? Well, he's a cheater, really, but he's kind of like a hustler, fast talker, and, tricky. He's tricky, yeah. And he's in New York. They want to buy a building, which Prabhupada likes, for $100,000. But Mr. Price will not prepare a contract, because you don't, something like $100,000, you don't just make a verbal agreement. It's got to be in writing with legal commitment. But this Mr. Price wouldn't do it. He would tell the boys, Prabhupada's in San Francisco, and he'd tell the boys in New York, Swamiji, he called Prabhupada His Excellency. His Excellency doesn't understand how things are done in America. So it's really, anyway, he's really trying to hassle them and hustle them and get money out of them. Okay, in New York, the boys had their orders from Prabhupada not to give any more money to Mr. Price unless there was a purchase contract. Prabhupada still wanted the building. He had written to Brahmananda on March the 4th, just incidentally, this is page 86 in the same volume. We read this morning up to page 7. This is page 86, so it's just a little bit further on. Right. So, yeah, Prabhupada had written to Brahmananda on March 4th. I hope when I go to New York next, I shall enter the new house forthwith. And he had written Roy Ram on March 7th. I'm very glad to learn that Brahmananda, yourself, and all others have the transcendental courage to take all risks for Krishna and this act will enhance your glory in Krishna consciousness. But he wanted them not to be cheated by false promises. Meanwhile, Mr. Price was asking the devotees to turn over $5,000 to his financier friend, Mr. Hall, who would then add $20,000 and make the down payment to the owner, Mr. Tyler. Mr. Price wanted Brahmananda to get the point across to His Excellency that negotiations had to be done in this fashion and right away if they seriously wanted to get the house. I mean, it's not exactly a house. Prabhupada's using that term. It's a building in central, really, right in the center of Manhattan, central New York. Right. Brahmananda wrote to Prabhupada asking him to advise the bank to transfer $5,000 into the account controlled by the boys, the trustees of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Prabhupada gave permission and asked that the check be signed by the president and secretary because, quote, Brahmananda and Satsvarupa the main support for purchasing this house, because they were working. And Kirtanananda is a supplement to this from his kitchen department. But he said that the check should be made to the seller, Mr. Tyler, not to the financier, Mr. Hall. Now, these poor boys, they're just in their early 20s. They've never been involved in such things at all, ever. And now you've got these real, like, cheaters and just tricky people, and they are not capable of dealing with them. Because if they give the money to Mr. Tyler, who owns the building, then it's a payment against the building. If it's given to Mr. Hall, then he's got nothing to do with the building at all. The money in the society is yours, Srila Prabhupada acknowledged. You can spend in any way, but it is my duty to give you advice as ever well-wisher. Then Mr. Price invited Brahmananda to meet Mr. Hall, and he suggested that Brahmananda come prepared with a check for $5,000. On the way, Mr. Price explained that Mr. Hall was perhaps the biggest real estate dealer in Manhattan, a multi-millionaire. He owned skyscrapers. Everything he owned was big. When Brahmananda entered Mr. Hall's office, he thought it was right out of a Hollywood movie. A conference room 10 times bigger than the 2nd Avenue Temple room. And seated at the head of a large oval table was Mr. Hall himself. The room was in semi-darkness, with a few spotlights on Mr. Hall, who sat before a battery of telephones. Even as they began to discuss, Mr. Hall paused several times, picking up phones and talking to persons in various places across the country. Young man, Mr. Hall said to Brahmananda, we're helping you get the house. It's a beautiful house, a New York City landmark. Then Mr. Hall's girlfriend called from a boat in the Caribbean. He talked to her for a while and then returned to Brahmananda and Mr. Price, who sat in the shadows at his conference table. Mr. Hall had a big contract he wanted Brahmananda to sign. Brahmananda knew that Swamiji wanted a contract, and here it was. He also knew that if he signed over the $5,000, he would have no other money and no extra income. And he knew they knew it. But Swamiji wanted the building. Swamiji himself had looked at $100,000 buildings and had offered to buy them, even though he had very little money to back his offers up. And Brahmananda always did what Swamiji said. To sign this contract, Brahmananda concluded, was an act of faith in Swamiji and Krishna. He didn't analytically ask, where will the rest of the money come from? To do so, he thought, would be like doubting Swamiji. So here he was in this big-time financier's office. It was awesome. The millionaires were going to help. Mr. Price was at Brahmananda's elbow. Mr. Hall was telling Brahmananda that everything was all right. We are going to get you this house, he said. Now it was actually going to happen. Here was one of the biggest men in Manhattan offering to help. And whereas Brahmananda had no money, Mr. Hall would be able to pick up the place very easily from the owner. Glancing quickly over the contract, Brahmananda signed. It was a deal, and he gave them the check for $5,000. As soon as Brahmananda and Mr. Price left Mr. Hall's office, there was a distinct change in Mr. Price. Although still acting as Brahmananda's friend, he now said, gee, now you have to get this money. Oh, Krishna. Oh, Krishna. As they walked together on the uptown streets, Mr. Price cheerfully pushed the whole thing onto Brahmananda. That was the change. Before, Mr. Price had been saying that he and Mr. Hall were going to do it, but now he said that it was all up to the devotees. Brahmananda asked about the legal position. Mr. Price explained that only the Krishna Society was bound. But what about the promises? What about Mr. Hall's being so rich and wanting to help them, and Mr. Price's wanting to help? Mr. Price assured Brahmananda that he and Mr. Hall did want to help. They were doing everything they could, but Brahmananda and the other devotees should also do everything they could and come up with the $20,000 to complete the down payment by the end of the month. Hare Krishna. Oh, gosh. And what if they couldn't? Mr. Price made it very clear. If you don't pay the balance in a month, then you lose your deposit, the $5,000. By the time Brahmananda reached 26 Second Avenue, he realized he had been cheated. He was crushed. He turned to the other devotees and told them what had happened, but they could only return, "Why did you do it?" Brahmananda phoned Srila Prabhupada in San Francisco. Now that his eyes had been opened about Mr. Price, Brahmananda was blunt about his mistake, and he told Prabhupada that he had given away the $5,000. All of it is gone? Srila Prabhupada asked. Yeah, Brahmananda replied. He heard Prabhupada hang up the phone. Brahmananda had been about to explain the whole thing, but Swamiji had just hung up without a word. Brahmananda placed the receiver back on the hook. He was shaken. The next day, the trustees held a special meeting. The boys sat around in the front room of Prabhupada's apartment, trying to decide what to do. Gargamuni again called Prabhupada, who advised them to stop the check at the bank. They should have done it the same day, because this is the next day, you know. Swamiji's as smart as a fox. Roy Ram smiled. Gargamuni phoned the bank, but it was too late. The check had already been cashed. They consulted Mr. Goldsmith, their friendly lawyer. He said it sounded like a weak legal case. Price and Hall hadn't legally bound themselves to pay anything if the devotees failed to pay. And if the devotees couldn't pay the $20,000 balance by the end of the month, they would lose their $5,000 deposit. They could sue for fraud, but court fees would be costly. Then, one by one, Brahmananda, Satsvarup, Kirtanananda, Roy Ram, Gargamuni, and the others began to look at the letters from Prabhupada and discuss how he had warned them to avoid being cheated. Their greatest blunder, they began to realize, was disobeying his instructions. He had told them not to trust the promises of these businessmen, and he had told them that the check should be made only to the owner, not to the financier. Within a few days, further instructions from their spiritual master came in the mail. There were admonishments, but hearing from him, even if he was chastising them, was better than the pain of his hanging up the phone without a word. But you have not followed my instructions, and now you're in trouble, he wrote to the boys. He wrote Roy Ram, "You are all foolish boys. I repeatedly warned you, even at the last point, that we should not pay the check unless there was agreement between Mr. Tyler and Mr. Hall. The agreement was signed like a marriage ceremony without the presence of the bridegroom. The mistake was there, and now you're repenting." To Satsvarup, he wrote, "You have asked me whether the San Francisco branch will pay some money for purchasing the house. But where is your house, and where is the purchase? So far it is talks of Mr. Price and Company, in which you innocent boys have been entrapped. I do not know how I can help you in your great blunder. I can only hope that Krishna will help you." And like the boys and the lawyers, Prabhupada thought that the legal case against the businessman would be a strong one. He said, "I am not a lawyer, but this is common sense affair. Mr. Hall has taken the money, and he must finance to purchase the house. If he has no money to finance, then it is a cheating case, clear and simple." Well, it's a fact. Srila Prabhupada was incredibly astute. Oh, gosh. incredibly astute, unbelievably astute. Yeah, in a category of his own. The culprits, he said, should be brought to criminal court. Their conspiracy and fraud were obvious and could be proven. Quote, from the telephonic conversation of Brahmananda, it appears to be an organized cheating case, and you have to face with courage without excusing any one of them. We are not revengeful, but we cannot lose Krishna's money for nothing. Unquote. The boys had already blundered so much that Prabhupada doubted whether they could tackle the cheaters, but he said they had to try. Let us have the house or return back the money. In default, there's clear case of cheating. Now you can do as you like. Srila Prabhupada wrote the boy's lawyer relating the history of the case. He also wrote a letter to the financier, the owner, and Mr. Price, threatening to expose everything, including what he alone had seen, that the lawyers involved were also implicated. Brahmananda could barely understand what was going on, but it appeared that Swamiji was going to get results. The boys were fools, certainly, but the businessmen were certainly cheaters, and Swamiji claimed that he could prove it in court. While admonishing his blundering disciples and going fiercely after the cheaters, Srila Prabhupada still remained the ultimate shelter for his foolish boys. In a letter to the 6 trustees of his New York branch, he shared transcendental light into their gloomy minds. Quote, forget the chapter. Take it for granted that Krishna has taken away this money from you for your deliberate foolishness. In future, be very cautious and abide by the orders of Krishna. If you abide by the orders of Krishna, he can give you things that you may need. Be cheerful and chant Hare Krishna without any lamentation. As I have told you several times, that my Guru Maharaj used to say that this world is not a fit place for a gentleman. His version is corroborated by the following verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is said, Yas yasti bhagavati akinchana bhakti, sarvaiganais tatra samasate sara, harova bhaktasya kuto mahadguna, manorate nasati davato bahi, which means a person who is not in Krishna consciousness has no good qualifications. However so-called gentleman one may be, or academically educated he may be, he is hovering over the mental plane, and therefore he must commit nuisance, being influenced by the external energy. A person who has, however, unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead has all the good qualifications of the demigods, unquote. In other words, you should not keep your trust on so-called gentlemen of the world, however nicely dressed he may be. In the matter of discharging our mission of Krishna consciousness, we have to meet so many so-called gentlemen, but we must be very cautious for dealing with them, as we are cautious in dealing with serpents. Unquote. Now, more than ever, the boys in New York wanted Swamiji to come back. Although most of the talk in the temple was still about real estate, They were holding regular kirtan and lecture programs, and 2 new boys had joined. Jadharani had finished some new paintings of Lord Vishnu, which now hung in the temple, and she was waiting anxiously for Swamiji to come and see them. Some devotees had made a new speaker's seat in the temple for Swamiji. They knew they were fools, but they asked him please to come back. He agreed. He set April the 9th as the date for his return to New York. But meanwhile, he still had much to do in San Francisco. So now we're back to San Francisco. One day, Malati hurried into Srila Prabhupada's apartment, took a small item out of her shopping bag, and placed it on Prabhupada's desk for his inspection. "What is this, Swamiji?" Srila Prabhupada looked down and beheld a 3-inch wooden doll with a flat head, a black smiling face, and big round eyes. The figure had stubby, forward-jutting arms and a simple green and yellow torso with no visible feet. Srila Prabhupada immediately folded his palms and bowed his head, offering the little figure respects. "You have brought Lord Jagannath, the Lord of the universe," he said, smiling and bright-eyed. "He is Krishna. Thank you very much." Srila Prabhupada beamed with pleasure, while Malati and others sat amazed at their good fortune of seeing Swamiji so pleased. Prabhupada explained that this was Lord Jagannath, a deity of Krishna worshipped all over India for thousands of years. Jagannath, he said, is worshipped along with 2 other deities, his brother Balaram and his sister Subhadra. Excitedly, Malati confirmed that there were other similar figures at Cost Plus, the import store where she had found the little Jagannath, and Srila Prabhupada said she should go back and buy them. Malati told her husband Shamsunda, and together they hurried back and bought the 2 other dolls in the set. Srila Prabhupada placed the black-faced, smiling Jagannath on the right. In the center, he placed the smallest figure, Subhadra, who had a red, smiling mouth and a rectangular black and yellow torso. The third figure, Balaram, with a white, round head, red-rimmed eyes, and a happy red smile, had the forward-jutting arms like Jagannath and a blue and yellow base. Prabhupada placed him next to Subhadra. As Prabhupada looked at them together on his desk, he asked if anyone knew how to carve. Shamsunda said he was a wood sculptor, and Prabhupada asked him to carve 3-foot-high copies of the little Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. Well, I had a sort of similar experience. I mean, very similar. We were in Dublin. Ireland, and we were distributing books. And I was on this one street, it's called Grafton Street. And it's like the best street in Dublin for distributing books. It's really pretty good. And I walked past a shop, and what did I see in the shop about this size, but Lord Balaram? Yeah. So I went in, and they gave me Lord Balaram free. but there was only Lord Balaram. And we took him back to the manor and they gave him to the Gurukul. Okay, so more than 2,000 years ago, Srila Prabhupada told them, there was a king named Indradyumna, a devotee of Lord Krishna. Maharaj Indradyumna wanted a statue of the Lord as he had appeared when he and his brother and sister had traveled on chariots to the holy field of Kurukshetra during a solar eclipse. When the king requested a famous artist from the heavenly planets, Vishvakarma, to sculpture the forms, Vishvakarma agreed on the condition that no one interrupt his work. The king waited for a long time while Vishvakarma worked behind locked doors. One day, however, the king felt he could wait no longer, and he broke in to see the work in progress. Vishvakarma, true to his word, vanished, leaving behind the uncompleted forms of the three deities. The king was nevertheless so pleased with the wonderful forms of Krishna, Balaram, and Subhadra that he decided to worship them as they were. He installed them in a temple and began worshipping them with great opulence. Since that time, Srila Prabhupada continued, Lord Jagannath has been worshipped all over India, especially in the province of Orissa, where there's a great temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri. Each year at Puri, during the gigantic Ratha Yatra festival, millions of pilgrims from all over India come to worship Lord Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra, as the deities ride in procession on three huge carts. Lord Caitanya, who spent the last 18 years of his life at Jagannath Puri, used to dance and chant in ecstasy before the deity of Lord Jagannath during the yearly Ratha Yatra festival. Seeing this appearance of Lord Jagannath in San Francisco as the will of Krishna, Prabhupada said that they should be careful to receive and worship Lord Jagannath properly. If Shamsundar could carve the forms, Prabhupada said, he would personally install them in the temple, and the devotees could then begin worshipping the deities. San Francisco, he said, could be renamed New Jagannath Puri. He chanted, Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patigami Bhava Tu Me. This is a mantra for Lord Jagannath, he said. Jagannath means Lord of the universe. O Lord of the universe, kindly be visible unto me. It is very auspicious that he has chosen to appear here. Shamsundar bought 3 large blocks of hardwood, and Prabhupada made a sketch and pointed out a number of details. Using the small statues, Shamsundar calculated ratios and new dimensions and began carving on the balcony of his apartment. Meanwhile, the devotees bought the rest of the tiny Jagannaths from Cost Plus, and it became a fashion to glue a little Jagannath to a simple necklace and wear him around the neck. Because Lord Jagannath was very liberal and merciful to the most fallen, Srila Prabhupada explained, the devotees would soon be able to worship him in their temple. The worship of the forms of Radha and Krishna in the temple required very high, strict standards, which the devotees were not yet able to meet. But Lord Jagannath was so merciful that he could be worshipped in a simple way, mostly by chanting Hare Krishna, even if the devotees weren't very much advanced. Prabhupada set March the 26th, the appearance day of Lord Caitanya, as the day for installing the deities. The devotees would have a big feast and begin worshipping Lord Jagannath. Prabhupada said that they would have to build an altar, and he told them how to prepare it. While Shamsundar hurried to finish his carving, a small splinter lodged itself in his hand, and the wound became infected. Finally, Shamsundar got blood poisoning and became so sick that he had to go to the hospital. Lord Jagannath was taking away the reactions to Shamsundar's previous sinful activities, Prabhupada said. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, we'll continue tomorrow. Anyone who'd like to come is welcome. Hare Krishna, Hare